Hello there folks, and welcome back to Getting Started with Laravel 4. In the previous video we had a look at the Laravel form class, and in this lesson we're going to work with form validation. Let's just start where we left off. Here we have a form to edit a user, but now what would happen if I left my email here empty? Well, I'd still be able to post a form. This is not expected behavior, and we would like to guard ourselves against that. Well, there's a Laravel validator class to the rescue. Now, in order to set this up, we first need to establish what route this post is actually posting to. Okay, it's doing a put request at user/to, so that will be the update method in our user resource controller. So let's open up that resource controller, controllers, user controller, and then here's that update method. Okay, let's create some room first. Well, first things first, we need the Laravel validator class. More specifically, we need to make a validator. Okay, now the first parameter is the data that we actually want to validate. So in this case, that's input all, because that's just the data in the post array. Now the second parameter is another array, and that will hold all the validation rules. For now, let's set a validation rule for email, and let's make sure that's required. Pretty straightforward, right? So now we have to store this validator inside of a variable. Let's just call that validator. And now that we have this validator instance, we can do fun stuff with that. For instance, we could run it through an if statement and say that if the validator fails, then we'll do a certain action. For now, let's just do die and dump and say validator failed. Let's empty this out again and post it. And sure enough, we get our validator failed message. So now what would we really like to do if our validation fails? Well, what we would really like to do is redirect back to where we came from. But more so, we'd like to send it back with the input so that we can repopulate the form. And then we'd also like to send back the errors. Well, this is what you want, and this is what you actually can do. The only thing you need to make sure is that when you're sending back the errors, make sure you specify that it's the validator errors that you want to send back. Also, you cannot just call redirect, but you need to return redirect in order for it to work. Okay, let's try and repost that form. And here you see we are being redirected to our form, and it looks like we've got our old input as well. Because remember, our email was empty. Let's try it once more, only this time I would like to add another rule. In addition to the required rule, I also want our email field to be a valid email. Now notice that I'm separating these rules with a pipe. And furthermore, I would like to be able to actually display these errors that we've got, these validation errors. You know what, let's just open up our view file. User, edit.blade.php, and underneath every form field we'll display any errors for that form field. Now Laravel's got an automatically bound view variable called errors. Now here we can just call the first error for the email field. And let's just copy that and make sure we also display any errors for the password field. Copy it once more, and maybe for the active field as well. And then one last time, like that, for the permission field. Okay, let's try that one more time. We'll just post it with an empty email again, like that. And sure enough, we are redirected back with errors. And just for fun, let's add some extra rules here. Okay, for our active field, we'll just say that it's required. And then for our password field, we'll just say that it needs to have a size of 5 characters. And we need to make sure that we pass in commas here as well. Okay, let's see if we can make this form to pass. Here I'll just type in an email address. Then I'll enter a password of 4 characters, and I'll set active to true. When I save that, sure enough, I am being redirected because my password must be 5 characters in length. Let's just set that, and this time all validation passes and we can actually store this user. Now there's just one thing, and that's really bugging me, and that's the following. You see, we are specifying all of these rules within our controller. Now there are many places that you can set up your validation. And I think a really good way would be to extract it to its own class. But we don't want to get too ahead of ourselves, and I think a good compromise would be to actually place them inside of a model, just to get them out of the controller. Now what we'll do is we'll take this array and open up the user model. Here we'll set a public static variable called rules, and we'll make that equal to our array, just like so. So now that we've abstracted our rules away to our model, we can easily call them here, simply by doing user :rules. Well, I think that's a bit better, and we can actually clean this up just a little bit more, like so. Right now, that makes our controller just a little bit more readable. And what's more, we've now taken away the responsibility for creating a proper rules array, and we've abstracted it to the model. And what's also good about it, now we can just reuse it. because we need the same validator array in our store method right here. So now we use it in two places. If we ever need to edit it, then we just have to open up our user model and edit it here. And that's all there is to it. Okay, so one final check to see if it still works. We'll set the password to a single character and uncheck the active box. Click Save, and there you have it. Our validation is still in working order. Now Laravel comes with loads of predefined rules, and I'm guessing they'll cover about 80 to 90% of all your validation needs ever. Right, you can check to see if a string is unique inside of the database. It can be required with all kinds of conditions. You can check to see if a string is a valid IP address. You can check that it must exist in the database, that it's in digits, that it has a certain date format, and so on and so forth. Also, you can set your own custom validation rules, but I think that's something for a more advanced course. Okay, well that covers the basics of validation. In the next couple of videos, we'll build a blog together. And in this hands-on project, we'll start from scratch and we'll combine everything that we've learned so far. And we'll also probably cover a couple of extras as well. So grab a cup of coffee and I'll see you on the other side.